Next, we're going to use the gingham fabric from your kit. It's called gingham because of the way it has been woven. But we'll get to how fabrics are woven in the next section. Gingham does not have a right and a wrong side. It's exactly the same on both sides. Give it a quick iron before you start. Gives us a good opportunity to learn about Vilene. You get different types of Vilene. We have a paper kind and a fabric kind. In both cases, we have glue already applied to the one side. That is the shiny little dots you can see. Sometimes they're not shiny, they're just white. You don't get them in many colors, basically gray, black and white. And you choose whichever color suits the fabric you're working with. Make sure that the dots, the shiny little dots, are facing down on your fabric. Whether it needs steam or not is something you need to test. When you do your test, you'll see that if you apply steam and it bubbles up and shrivels up, one of two things can be wrong. Your temperature of your iron is too high, or this particular Vilene does not want any steam. I just like to iron it on the other side. Allow it to cool first on the ironing board, otherwise it might distort because the glue is still a bit tacky. Use the darker of the two pencils that you've got. In the one corner, it doesn't matter which corner, you count down 1, 2, 3 little blocks and make a line where you want to start in this point, reinforcing back to this point, then carrying on down, and 2 blocks from the edge just make a dot. Right, we are still on stitch type number 1. The stitch type light is on. It's flashing a bit on camera, but I can assure you it's not doing that in real life. We are going to start as we have marked, and we're just going to recap the whole reinforcing thing. You can only decide where the needle is going to pierce when it gets close, so find your position, press the reverse button, one stitch at a time, and I'm happy with that. We just want to recap on starting and stitching on a straight line. Close to the dot, you are going to pierce it exactly. With the needle in, turn, and just a few stitches. The needle position is up when you stop, and that's good because we don't want to have it inside the fabric when you're changing stitch types. Right, now to change the stitch type, it is in the correct mode for changing the stitch type. At the moment it's at 01, which is the middle of the foot plate, straight stitch. If we want to change that, say to a normal zigzag, you would do it over here. It stays on 0 and you would press this plus button to get to 6. But notice how the needle is jumping around while we change stitches, and that is why we want it to be above the fabric. stitch has a default setting, and if you want to see what they are, in a zigzag as we are, we want to see what the width is. Change the mode to width and it'll show you that it is a 5mm width. Length from zig to zag would be 2mm. We go down to 0.3, that's rather close together, and the upper maximum would be 4.5. Right, so that gives you an idea of the width settings and the length settings. I would like the length not to be that long, so let's go back to about 2. That's good. Let's do a test and see what that stitch looks like. Just so that I hold my place, and I want to show you what that looks like. Normal zigzag stitch. Let's change back to a narrower zigzag. This would be your width side for setting. Narrower. 2 is quite narrow, so let's have a look at what that looks like. And let's get them closer together as well. I'll try that one and see what that looks like. I'm going to tap the foot control, needle down. So there we can see what it looks like. A zigzag that is further apart, stitch length is longer, and the width is smaller, 5mm, 2mm. And here we have 0.8mm together. So you can see how stitch length and stitch width can change the appearance of your stitches. Tap the foot control again to raise the needle, and we are going to choose a more interesting stitch. Let's see what 13 looks like. That's a blanket stitch. Back to mode. 1, 3. Right. And our blanket stitch. What you can see is that the stitch quality is rather good. Now obviously you can change the width and change the length between the stitches. Let's just do that for a bit. Okay, needle up so that we don't damage it while we're changing settings. We still want the same stitch. Standard setting over there would be 3.5 wide. Let's see if we can go to the maximum. I know that I did 7, and let's get them a little bit closer together. So let's go 1.5. Very pretty stitch and quite strong as well. Needle up. Let's select one of the satin stitches. Let's go for 21. And mode back. 21. See what that looks like in its standard form. Right, we will have a look in a minute what that looks like. We first want to change our width. Let's make it slightly narrower. Width over there is, let's make it 5, and then put those stitches a little bit closer together, and let's see. So we know that we changed the width and the length of stitch. Over here was the default setting. Then we changed it to a narrower stitch closer together, and there you have the result. Okay, let's change direction. Needle up Let's try stitch number 25. This lovely wavy line, it's quite a unique stitch. If you know about stitches on sewing machines, this is one that's not common. Right, let's just change the setting of the length. Get those stitches closer together and see the effect. To get the stitches closer together from here, it was just 2 little notches down to get them to be this close. What this shows us is that the satin stitches like to be a little bit closer together than the standard setting of the machine. Let's try stitch number 27. It's a kind of cross stitch, mode 27. So in mode 7 is the widest, and let's get them a little bit further apart. Right, let's see how that goes. You can immediately see the difference. It's much looser with just a few settings changed. Right, let's go for 36. That is also an unusual stitch. Rather nice feathery stitch. Please continue playing with your machine. Try out every single stitch in different widths. If you see something that you like, make a note of the settings that you used so that you know next time you want to use it again. Fill the entire piece of gingham fabric and have fun. When you are done with your stitching and you'd like to remove your work from the machine, do not use the thread cutter on the side of the machine. At the beginning of your stitching, where there is reinforcing, you can cut your threads short against the fabric. Needle thread, bobbin thread. Because of the reinforcing, your stitches won't come undone. At the end, however, there is no reinforcing in this case, so you need to cut your threads longer. Turn your work over, pull on the bobbin thread to make the needle thread come to the reverse side of your work. I like to use my presser foot to hold my work sort of as an extra hand. Use something sharp like your tailor's awl to pull the needle thread to the back of your work. You need to then knot those 2 threads together. Twice. If this work is going to be out of sight, for example, in between 2 layers, you can just snip about 2 centimeters long. Otherwise, you need to insert these 2 threads into the eye of your needle. Don't worry, I'll show you many times again how to do that. Then you bury the threads inside the stitches that are already there. Now, what can be more neat and tidy than that?